In a drawing, we want it to jump off the page. In order to do that, we need to do three things and to practice. We need pressure control, shade smoothly, and understand how light is going to behave. I'm going to walk you through these three things and then we'll shade something together. First, let's start with pressure control. Realistic shading is done by creating a series of values ranging from light to dark. The harder I press down the pencil, the darker the strokes of the portrait. Displaying a limited value range can end up looking very flat, while portraits with wider value range are going to pop and have good pressure control. Practice straight shading from one end of your sketchbook to the other while pressing harder and harder until the value gets darker. Gradually, another way to practice is to draw a long rectangle and divide it into several squares. Fill the squares from right to left and start with the darkest value you possibly can make and work your way towards the lightest. It is important to maintain consistent pressure between each back and forth stroke, or each individual stroke. This will take some practice and concentration to develop the muscle memory. How to shave smoothly. Try to eliminate major gaps between your strokes while maintaining good pressure control. Now, it is difficult to eliminate gaps if your pencil is sharp. So what you can do is wear the pencil down until the tip is dull, or use the side of the lead to draw your strokes. Thinner. If you're shading a large area and want to avoid these dark strips, avoid using your writing grip. While pivoting at the wrist, instead use an overhand grip and pivot from your elbow and shoulder to achieve much longer strokes. Just remember to keep those strokes close together, eliminating gaps that can make your drawing look scratchy. Today, I want us to practice pressure control and how to shade smoothly before we move on to understanding how light behaves. You should complete the drawing handout and turn it in at the end of class. Today, we're going to discuss understanding light. Have you ever tried shading something over and over and you notice something is just off? For most beginners, shading is probably a guessing game. That's what it was for me until I learned a few basic things about light. Hopefully, things will start making more sense knowing where to correctly add light and shadow. This can make a big difference in how realistic your artwork will come across. I'm going to use a sphere to point out the different elements of light because the patterns are a lot easier to point out than a complex form such as a nose, for example. Here we have a plain wood involved with a source of light coming from the top left, and we have two distinct sides. The light side, which is facing the light source, and the shadow side, which is turned away from the edge of our shadows. We have something called a core shadow, which is dark strip running along the boundary between the two sides. The core shadow is most visible on the white table because white is highly reflective light rays. Come down, bounce off the table, and illuminates the shadow sides of the ball, leaving a dark band. So as you can see, we have two types of light, direct light and reflective light. That's why shadows are rarely all black. There are so many things in the environment that light can reflect off of. Walls, nearby objects, or even dust particles floating around the air. Keep in mind as I show these next two lighting examples that black absorbs light. So this example of the black table, the core shadow is no longer visible. This also allows us to tell which areas are lit by reflections and which are lit by core shadows. Now that we have a bit of information about light and where it comes from, let's practice some shading techniques to capture that illusion of three-dimensional object on a flat surface.